of the members who have not attended the AGM and have not been able to follow the chapter updates. So this is the new board for you. So we have new president, vice president as Raj. Rajneesh Dash is the secretary. Vamsi is our new treasurer, and Saujanya Veru is our membership director, followed by the co-opted members and volunteers. So thank you again. Thank you all. All those members who have opted and given their commitment for the chapter. So without much ado, I think I'll first hand it over to Vasanth. So to introduce Alexis. So I know there is not much of an introduction required for Vasanth. We all know him very well as founder or president of DPO Club. So Vasanth is Director Compliance at Darwin Box and also President of DPO Club Hyderabad. And he comes with a very strong expertise in information security, data privacy, and regulatory compliance. He also leads the implementation of compliance frameworks that strengthen data protection, privacy, governance, and risk management. And Vasant is also a very passionate, person who's usually involved in building a culture of compliance and establishing organizations, you know, uh, to align with evolving regulatory and security requirements. So, in that same context, we have Vasant today introducing us to the key aspects of DPDP implementation. We've been very closely following the act and the rules that have come up recently, but a lot of us also have actively started implementing it. So Vasant is going to walk us through steps of how we have to perform a gap assessment, understand how to perform audits for in line with DPDP Act. Thanks, Vasant. Over to you. You're on mute, Vasant. Not audible.
Sorry. Thank you, Sujay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking your time on a holiday weekend mode. Yeah, thanks for joining. Let me, I believe an introduction is more enough, but let me go ahead and share my screen and let's go ahead for the session. Okay. So, so today we will discuss about DPDP implementation, a privacy impact assessment, and we will also look into privacy audit as a process. Right, we made it into categorized into like kind of like a 3 stages. Each stages will begin, and it's a 60 slide which is made it, and it will take a quite number of time, but I'll try to close it as minimal as possible. Yeah. I'm trying to change the slide just to, yeah. So this is a 18-step approach.
We are not able to see your screen. Is it only for me or everyone? I'm not able to see your screen.
Can I just confirm?
Yeah, Vasant, I think we should reshare your screen.
We are unable to see your screen.
Okay. Let me share the entire screen. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Now we are able to see.
Yeah, now
we are
thank
able
you.
to see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So this is strategic implementation plan that we made it, and it's kind of an 18-step approach to how to implement DPDP, and that is how we are going to start with. So the 3 categories, as I told you, it is one is implementation of DPDP, other one is a privacy impact assessment, which will again is part of the DPDP plan, and separately what is the difference between privacy impact assessment and what is privacy audit, and how to perform a privacy audit. That is the focus of the session. I'm moving to the next slide. Please let me know if you're able to see my screen. Okay, moving ahead. So the agenda, phase 1, which will talk about mobilization, phase 2, which is the discovery phase, Phase 3, which is the gap analysis, your privacy impact assessment phase. Phase 4 is remediation. Phase 5 is operationalization, and phase 6 is the continual compliance. This is how this is made, like how to implement, and start with mobilization, which is the governance, framing a DPDPA committee. So if you look into this, I have mentioned legal, compliances, CISO, IT security, HR, and CFO and finance. So in most of the organization today, the DPO function or a privacy function is an add-on function with let it be a CISO function, or let it be a compliance function, or it has been added with the legal. So the DPO role is kind of like tied with the dual roles. That's the reason I will not mention a separate function here. So again, from a DPDPA committee which is forming is also required when you bring in all the stakeholders, the leaders from this particular department together to make decisions. To, let's say, if there is a tools required, a budget required, or kind of a resources required, these committee is the first step, bringing in the team together and building up the process. So as a part of process, a committee, forming the committee is the first step that we should do. Going to the applicability and scope, which is framing your roles and responsibilities, which is identifying the what is your role, what is your vendor role, what is your data subjects that you have. So let me clarify what is data fiduciary. Data fiduciary is you as an individual, as an organization, where you define the purpose and the means of processing the data, which is who is the data controller. And for a data processor is someone whom you provide services, where you tell what to do on your behalf, and somebody will perform those actions, or somebody will provide services on behalf of you. That those people will become data processor. And data principals is kind of your employees, your candidates who apply for your job, your visitors who comes to your office to meet. So these people will be part of your data principals. And coming to the customers, if you are a B2C, your app users or website visitors, these people will become data principals. Role mapping. So internal data, customer data. So as I called out in my previous slide, data fiduciary is the internal data. For example, you decide or you define the purpose of processing. It could be your HR data, it could be a finance data, it could be your vendor data, where you define the purpose of processing. Those people will become a data fiduciary, and your role as a data fiduciary. And your vendor who will become your processor. And for example, if you are using AWS or Azure, any kind of services to process the data, or any kind of a vendor to further process the data, so those people will become your sub-processor. Please park in for a minute if you have any queries. I will, in the interest of the number of slides, I'm just quickly moving on. If you have any queries, please stop and let me know. Okay. So always data fiduciaries. Okay, we talked about data fiduciaries, we talked about data processor, we talked about data principals. There are certain organizations who always act as a data fiduciaries, right? So data fiduciaries have certain responsibilities. Let's say, for example, these departments, HR, finance and payroll, legal, procurement, vendor, they always act as a data fiduciaries, which is your data controller, nothing but a data controller. So these people will define the purpose of data which is to be processed, whether they might or they might not use and third-party services to perform those requirements. Whether HRMS, it could be a SaaS-based HRMS, or if you are using a background vendor to perform the background verification, or if it's a payroll, you might use it in-house or you might outsource it. So if it is a legal, you might use it in-house legal services or outsource the legal services. From a department's perspective, you will be the internal team which will be doing it, and you will be data fiduciary. And the moment you outsource it, those people will become a data processor, but you will be always, these department will always be a data fiduciary department. Coming to the department with dual roles, whether they will be a data fiduciary, they can also be a data processor. Take IT and infrastructure as an example. You will be a data fiduciary for an internal department, and if you are processing for your customers, right? So those people will become a data processor. So in those cases, a same department will act as a data fiduciary and as a data processor. Let's take sales and marketing. So the internal lead management, you will be a data fiduciary. And if for externals, for example, you are doing a processing for someone, providing a sales and marketing as a service, sales as a service, marketing as a service, you will become a data processor. The reason I'm taking time in explaining the difference between fiduciary and processor, I will able to explain you because this is again going to come into your privacy impact assessment, identifying the roles and all. That's the reason I'm taking more time uh, putting out this information. Take customer support as an example. You will have a fiduciary for your internal employees, and if you are providing customer support or any third-party support for services, you will become a data processor. And the key obligations which will be include if you are a data processor, then data fiduciary to data processor contract clause, SLA adherence, and all those things will be part of your standard contractual agreement. This is here to clarify you what is the role difference between departments and what kind of role they will do as a fiduciary or a processor. Take HR, finance, and legal, they will be always a fiduciary, and procurement, vendor management, they will become a fiduciary. And if it is a IT or infrastructure, sales or marketing, customer support, they will act as a fiduciary. They will also act as a processor. And sometimes IT infrastructure, take AWS as an example, they will act as a sub processor when you provide services. So this is a clarification to provide what kind of role any kind of department within an organization will play across. Going to the next. Fiduciary has certain responsibilities. Processor has certain responsibility, even sub-processor. But if you look into the from a DPDP perspective, fiduciary requirements are being given. Processor has to follow the requirements coming from, or a contractual flow down has to come from fiduciary. Whatever it's an obligation for a fiduciary, this has to flow down to the processor. And similarly, it has to flow down to the sub-processor also through the contracting model. Fiduciary primary responsibility, which includes notice, consent, data principal right support, records of processing activities, and data privacy impact assessment. So there's a primary responsibility or a fiduciary should do. And processor should obligate on these through fiduciary, through a fiduciary to processor contracting model. I'll take a pause here before moving to the next phase. If you have any queries on the data fiduciary, data processor, or data principal, I'm happy to clarify. Okay. Moving ahead to the organization scoping. So as part of DPDP implementation plan, right? So you define, understand what is your role, what is the scope of the departments. Then you move to the organization scoping, list out all the departments within your organization, identify a sub department also, right? So identify each and every department that touches personal data. Unless and until if you don't identify the entire department where a personal data is being used upon, you will not be able to fully comply to the DPDP. So identify the, list out all the departments, list out all the sub departments, and these sub functions will have various activities. Granularly identify those departments and map all the data, identify doing a data discovery, and map all those data with, like, for example, HR as a function, for example, right? They will have multiple departments: talent acquisition, payroll, operations, learning and development, right? Each and every sub department has to map what tools that they use. Okay, I'll follow. This will be followed in the next slide, but just to give it a very high level, right? Talent acquisition. Let's say they're using a particular product, so identify that particular or list of products, right? And identify the list of tools which is used in the department. Identify the list of data which has been collected as part of the department, and map it to whom it has been shared with, who all have access to that. So a granular mapping, a discovery, and a mapping has to be done at a department level. So who will do this all this mapping? So this is part of that where you have to identify the SPOC for each departments. So identify the SPOC from each sub departments, do a selection, keep a selection criteria, make them, provide them a training, understand what you want, explain them this is what the requirement it is. So I want the list of data sets, where all data which has been set, sitting in the each department, what type of tools that you're using, whether it's a HR, whether it's a SaaS-based tool, or is it a on-prem solution which you're using, or is it an Excel sheet. So you have to list out, to tell the requirement very clear to this box so that you will be able to get the relevant output. The team who will be working with you will not have the sufficient knowledge on a privacy or a security, but you have to tell them what is required. So you have to provide adequate training and tell them their responsibility for as part of this activity. This is not an ad hoc activity. This is a requirement and compliance to the law. You have to tell them the importance of the activity and what could be the consequences if you are not doing it. And the other option also, identify tools that can fetch in like for probably like an inventory tool. I do not want to name any tools here, but you can go and explore tools that can identify, integrate with your systems and tell you what all data it is present in the systems. So this will also help you to identify what is the list of tools, what is the list of categories of data, how long the data has been retaining. You will able to identify that, and what all controls are covered or what all controls are not there. Let's say, for example, you have a sensitive data, but the data is not encrypted or the data is not masked. So these tools can help you also to understand where the data sits, what type of uh, controls which has been implemented, whether the controls are adequate or not. You will be able to identify that. So it's a kind of digital inventory. And this is how the data mapping register to identify the data set. Each and every sub department should have this data set, and you have to identify this data set, identify the fields, identify the purpose, identify the source where the data you are getting from, where is the storage where it has been stored, what is the retention, and where it has been, to whom it has been shared with, for example, right? So you have to identify these systems or sets in place and tell that, or these all the fields which is present and what all the retention which has been available. So if you can identify these information, then that is where your impact assessment understand, because you're not going to start something new to do a privacy impact assessment, but still this DPDP has come as an effect. So what you have to do is you have to do from scratch, do a privacy impact assessment, and then understand necessary controls or list out all the controls which is required to be called out in the gap assessment. So this is the mapping register. For example, I've given examples for HR, I've given examples for marketing, I've given examples for sales and finance. And this retention will vary from organization to organization. And also if this organization and probably part of a different sectors, the retention will vary depending upon the sector that organization falls into. Yes, Mr. Nel, please.
So what happens like your organization is globally operating. So some of like HR department is belong to some other X country. So you have to collect that information, or it's going to be belongs to only that India information you have to be collected.
So when you do the DPDP implementation, it is for Indian data subjects. You have to do it from Indian perspective. Anyway, if you are employed, if it's another country, you would have already done as part of your systems or tools in place, or if you would have outsourced to any other vendors. This has been part of your other countries. For example, take Europe or US, either GDP or CCPA, you would already been assessed. The particular country privacy team or security team could have been already been assessed. Or if it is a headquartered in India, then you have to use this process and assess those controls also are adequately covered if it is not done previously.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So this for customer support, legal and compliances. And so this is how you can start do a data mapping. And after data mapping, understand the data has been collected lawfully or as part of the consent. You have a relevant consent or not. So if you have not taken consent, what you should do? You should take a consent. If it is not legitimate use, you should have collected. You should identify and go ahead and delete it. Or if it's not a legitimate use, what is the process? I cannot delete it, but I would need that. Then you have to go and put your privacy policy, clearly call it out and tell that this is part of my requirement and so on so purposes. Then you have to go and take the consent and then you have to document. This all comes as part of your gap assessment. So you have to identify and verify your controls, identify the requirement for processing, identify the requirement for collecting the data, and see that whether the necessary controls are in place. Okay, for example, if you're collecting a PI data, which is, for example, you're collecting an Aadhaar, you're collecting a social security number, or sorry, your Aadhaar number, or any kind of data which is sensitive in nature, you should have the relevant controls or technical controls implemented. You have to call it out as part of your gap assessment, understand and map all the controls. So it is not required for you to map all the controls, but it is recommended to map all the controls which you have in place. For tomorrow, there is a regulation which is coming. Okay, for example, you are mentioning that I have encryption in place, but you also have data set which is comes under the or a particular set of data which comes under a regulatory scrutiny. That particular data set you already have a, for example, bring your own keys concept, and you also have that implemented for that particular data set. You do not go and relook into the entire process when that regulation comes into effect. So when you have the systems, the set classification set and the controls listed out in detail, it would be easy for you to pick out those data set and those controls which has been implemented. So it will be easy for you. If it is not implemented, you know, need not to do a reinvent, and you can go back and say this is the particular set of data which is applicable for me, these are the controls which is applicable, and I have implemented these controls already. I have to additionally add one more control, those control which you can add and say that this is the plan. So this will help you on the way forward, because once the laws has come into effect, you can see more regulatory or sector specific kind of compliances will come. So we should be able to adhere to those compliances in the near future. It will be keep changing. So audit existing safeguards, that is to identify what all controls you have. This is what I said: privacy controls, security controls, and regulatory controls. This is performing gap analysis as a gap assessment. So stage one, form a committee. Stage two, what is your role? Scope it. Stage three, identify the data which is present in your system across all the departments, across all the systems. Stage four, based upon the data which is collected, based upon the inputs that you have, what all controls you have to correlate whether this particular controls is necessary enough to comply. So this is a stage where you will identify that the necessary data and controls which is in place today, it will help me into either am I complying or I'm not complying. This is the gap assessment stage, which you can call it as a privacy impact assessment also. I will make a pass here if you have any questions on gap assessment, because I tried covered it in the previous slide also itself. So if you want to call it out, I can. If you have any queries, I will keep a pass here.
Vasant, Sujay here. Do we
Yes,
have any
Vijay.
specific tools that we can leverage for this gap assessment? Any templates or tools?
I can share post the session.
Okay. So these
Sujay.
were like
Yeah.
custom made that individually we made, but there are no in like
There
software
are
that is
tools.
available to.
There are tools. There are see, I know there are tools already in market. We have also explored multiple tools. Okay. See, the problem is if you use a particular tool, that particular tool that you integrate with, right? So it has to identify your data. And then if you do the data, that data set which also go and sit in the particular tool, that tool also will become a processor for you, right? You are using a
Understood.
data inventory tool, and that data inventory tool which either tell you these are the list of data subjects or data subjects data which will present. There are tools, they say it will be available only in the cache, it will not be available to the in our database, but you will, that trust you have to come, right? So at this stage you cannot able to rely, but if you are confident on the tool and if you are okay to be take that tool as a processor and or a sub-processor, then you can definitely use those tools and do the data inventory, data mapping, and also the control mapping, and then do a privacy impact assessments. There are tools available in the market.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Moving on to the next, which is the mitigation planning. So identify the controls are necessary enough. If the controls are not sufficient, add additional controls. Categorize these controls into three, which is either it's a process-based fix which is required, or a technical fix which is required, or there is a new tool additionally which is required, which is for a commercial. So this is how we have to categorize part of remediation. When you categorize it, process fix, you have to create a policy, procedure, and frame and move it towards uh, getting this implemented. Technical fixes, you identify something is not encrypted, you identified some retention period is more, okay, or auto deletion scripts, for example. All those things you can do. And if you want an additional support to do an encryption or any other additional things, that you have to go through your uh, commercial discussion. That is why I said the board should be able to, you should be able to convince the board as part of DPDP committee, where finance will play a major role. Moving cost and retention strategy. This is a very important point uh, discussed across various companies. The reason is because of, let's say, you are storing a huge number of data for performing certain activities and you have a certain controls in place, whether those controls are adequate, or you are going to spend more on the control rather than the implications, right? Protecting it. So that is how you have to, the cost of storage versus the risk of breach. You are putting more controls, you are putting more efforts, and you're putting more cost to it rather than the risk of breach. So that is the liability versus the retention period you have to take care. Whether you're going to buy a tool, whether you're going to manage the risk, or you're going to reduce the risk by reducing the retention. Operationalizing, it is about, so we have discussed on the four stages. Stage one of identifying, stage two of listing out all the inputs of the data, and stage three of gap assessment, and stage four of mitigation. So after mitigation, so you have to operationalize. You have mitigated, you have identified the relevant controls are in place. So post that, that's the period which you have to operationalize and move forward. So once mitigated does not mean that you are always compliant. You have to follow the process, and there will be new tools which is will be purchased in your organization. There will be new services will be given in your organization, I mean, taken in your organization. There will be also more process or more systems will be brought into your organization, right? So for that purposes, you should create a process. Anything that is happening new, it has to formally go under your privacy impact assessment, identify, define steps, define gap assessments, define privacy impact assessments, bring in and test it before getting into the building into the process. So that is something as part of your operationalization. So create process for that. Anything that is coming new, it has to go through the checks of, for example, privacy, security, and the legal. So it has to go through all the three teams. Just giving you for an example. So all teams, wherever PI data which has been tested, it has to go through the privacy function approval. It has to go through the legal approval. It has to go through the security approval. So necessary security in place, necessary privacy in place, or necessary contractual agreement in place. So this is how we have to define it. Anything that which is coming new, and if you are buying a new AI model, it has to properly test an impact assessment and get it clearance from the DPO. And new vendors you have to do as part of the same security assessment model. Get this as part of your TPRM assessment, test it, understand the vendors security reports, understand the vendors VAPT reports, and in terms of their also third party checks that a lot of tools does. So you can use those tools to manage the vendors or check the vendor risk metrics. Okay, coming to the consent architecture. So consent notice and consent model. Um, so what is the difference between notice and what is the difference between consent? So you've been hearing this a lot between notice and consent, especially in employment, right? People say consent is not required. People say notice is more than enough. Have you heard about notice and consent? Anyone would like to talk about notice and consent? Okay. So let's take HR as the HR data as a example. So people say notice is more than enough. It's a legitimate use that I do not require to take a consent. What is notice first? You are telling that I am processing your data is part of your employment. That is notice. And consent is something that I am taking an acknowledgement saying that I am performing certain activity as part of your data. This is a set of data, and this data I'll be collecting and using it. Consent can be withdrawn at any point of time, right? So in major of the queries that I have received so far, notice is something where people say if you have a HR data or you have a employment data, notice is more than enough. The consent is not required. But the problem lies in the list of data or data sets that you are collecting it. So if you're collecting any sensitive data like Aadhaar or some sensitive data which is able to identify you, so those data or has to be collected with consent. Take example as a biometric. You are going to an organization. That organization has a secured workplace, and this particular secured workplace, a biometric access is required, and you have to enroll those biometric access. Does your biometric access needs to be retained even after your exit from the company? Definitely no. So those things which can be withdrawal can be part of the consent. Two, I do not want to use a biometric. Do you have an alternate control? Do you have an access card mechanism which can be done? But as an organization can take a call either to use biometrics to ensure the safety of the systems, data, or the people, So as an organization can definitely take a call, and it is a user who can definitely provide a consent and withdraw the consent post the services or post the employment. So that's the difference between notice and consent. And if you are a visitor, you are coming to an organization. You are looking from a visitor, or you have a CCTV which is capturing your data. It is important to notify that you are under surveillance. That is called a notice. By agreeing to this, coming into this area, you are being monitored. That is notice. I hope this clarifies. And notice the requirements, personal data being collected, purpose of processing, accessing of rights, compliant mechanism. And if you are not giving notice, there is a, if you are a B2C or if you are a B2B which has multiple users across, it is also important for you to notify in 22 schedule languages, or sorry, 22 languages in the schedule 8 as per the requirement. Moving to the next slide on the data principal rights. It is your right to access the data at any point of time, the right to correct the data or update or delete the data, right to grievance, to provide a DPO contact and tell that this is the purpose of, this is the point of contact where you should reach out. And quickly moving to the other sections, which is breach management and reporting. This is an example where how sector specific will vary from the requirement. So DPDP, Data Protection Board, you have to report less than 72 up to 72 hours. And for certain, for security incidents, you will report for 6 hours. And sectoral will have a different regulation, RBI, CB and all, it have 2 to 6 hours, depending upon the sector. So sector will always vary. So sector will play a major role than the DPDP. But again, you have to report to all the relevant authorities, whether it is certain, whether it is RBI, whether it is SEBI or DPDP board, Data Protection Board, you have to report to all the required. And these people have to be converted or added, not converted, sorry, you have to be added as part of your interested parties, and this needs to be added part of your policies and procedures, when to notify, whom to notify, how to notify, and who will do those actions, all has to be converted into your policy and procedures. That is why this particular portion has been brought in as part of operationalization, where this has to be built into your SOPs and procedures to notify them. Coming to the phase 6, which is your continual compliances, which is your audit phase. So we will discuss on the audits in detail, but as part of um, the journey, audit is the journey that it will help you to ensure that you are following the controls adequately. You will ensure that this is a period which has been defined, and those particular periods you have to do an audit. And this audit requirement will vary from sector to sector, and also this audit requirement will vary from uh, SDF. So there is a requirement specifically for SDF that we will communicate in the next slide. And SDF communication is still, we are waiting for the SDF communication, who will act as a significant data fiduciary. And coming to the common blind spots, backups and snapshots, which we see retain data for years, which is way more than the retention period. Unstructured data like your emails, local Excel files, shared drives contain a lot of PA data. This has to be covered as part of your gap assessments to identify, or using tools to identify these data. And third party says that you provide or you take certain services from these third parties, whether they actually delete the data, ensure or require a proof of erasure on legacy systems where they have limited delete capabilities. Yeah. So these are the common blind spots today. We'll park it for now.
Vasant, this is Anil.
Yeah.
So
I
whatever you
know.
explained like previously, right? a couple of like PI data where it is like we had to be follow some encryption and like backup related. So these type of like the common activities. If we are gonna take any of like the framework of like ISO 27001 or like any sort of like frameworks like PCI DSS, if you are involving in that, the same things is going to be explained, right? What is I just want to know like the difference on that particular scenario.
I think the problem is with the scope, Mr. Anil. See, if you
Mm-hmm.
look, DPDP, you cannot scope it out. If you take ISO, you can scope it for a particular department, one or two departments, and you can scope it and do certification for those particular departments. You take ISO 27701 as an example, you can do a certification only as a processor. You can do a certification only as a controller. So those controls you can choose and define and scope it, or you can that boundary you can make it. From a DPDP perspective, you cannot create that boundary. It goes wherever PA data sits. It's it will be applicable.
But see about it, like if your company is going to be follow like a HIPAA or high trust, then what it will be
Mm.
like? Again, it's a subset of like you can say DPO, or like if you're following such type of standards, is it okay?
Slightly differs because the requirement varies. Okay, let's say notice or consent or a notification to the board, you can inbuild these requirements to the existing process. Okay, you already have a process, you can bring in these into your existing process. But the problem lies actually with the systems, or where either high trust or HIPAA that systems does not touch. Those is the place where this is going to create more impact. Take finance, your internal finance team, your procurement team, where you have a lot of PA, or your payroll team, or you might have outsourced to a different vendor. Those controls, how will you validate? Because today, as per the law, if you are a fiduciary, you are liable. And for processor, there is no direct liability. The control has to flow down through only contracting model. If you are outsourcing certain services to a processor, and it is your liability 100% to ensure that these checks or these controls are implemented for your processor. How will you enforce? It is only through contracting model and your third party assurance. So your third party assurance, include your TPRMs, your assessments, your audits for the vendor, and ensure that these controls are in place. These controls requirements are communicated well in the contract and been agreed upon. Whether a data processing agreement which has been built or signed by both the parties. Technical security measures are being implemented. Those requirements are communicated in the DPAs. So these all has to be looked upon.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Oshin.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. One quick question. Now, I have a customer who's a medical, organization, and there are people registering online and through physical facilities also. Right? So, guidelines on which format should the consent be taken would be, within policy security controls will be different for both, online
So,
and
so I'm
offline
not able to hear you
services.
properly. What you're saying, you have a customer.
No, I have a customer who is into medical,
Medical. Hmm.
so now they have patients registering both online and offline. So they have, previously people will come and register, senior citizens come and register, physical format. So they sign a physical consent. Okay. So they have
Okay.
young patients who can register online and always sign the consent online. So now since the security controls for both of these formats change fairly, for physical control and for digital consent form. Is there any guidance that it has to be collected in a uniform format, or is it okay if I can collect in multiple formats the same consent form because the senior citizens don't have an option to sign on electronically. So they use a physical paper. Is that acceptable?
Okay. Okay, if I understand your question, you have a pharma-based client who is basically having online, collecting online and offline consent. Is there a difference of consent is okay, or is there a it has to be uniform? Or for example, if it's a senior citizen, so the online consent is agreeable or not? Is your question, is my understanding right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, okay. See, consent, for example, you can take it in through multiple sources depending upon how the consent is being achieved. Okay. For example, an organization is saying, I'm using one particular system. I will take a centralized consent. Okay. But another organization, whichever application you're using, I'm taking consent on those applications. Okay. There is a consent manager topic. There's a different topic that will come definitely. Once everything has been finalized, that is going to create some new requirements. We'll see what is going to come. There are a lot of consent managers today available. We are yet to see on what is going to come on the consent manager piece of it. If you ask me whether you can collect, yes, you can collect. But how do you let the data subject to withdraw those consent if you are collecting it through a physical mode? That's a question. Do you have a consent validity? Let's say I will collect the consent and say that this consent is only valid for 5 months or 6 months, for example. And you also have to reach out, you also provide multiple mechanism to reach out to you. It could be email, it could be phone, it could be an address where people can reach out to you. Yes, Satindra.
I was good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Uh, I have a question regarding like suppose in one of the slides you said that we have to reduce the data on the cloud, but when you as per EHR 2016 guideline, generally patient data stays for almost like 7 to 10 years. So how it will impact then?
That's what I was trying to say. Regulatory requirements falls above the DPDP. So none of the privacy law today says you have to retain it only for 3 years, 4 years, right? So the as per the requirement you have to retain as per the, let's say for example, simple language across all the privacy standards or frameworks you take, right? As longer as needed or no longer is necessary. That's the simple logic behind it. You can store it. You have a purpose to store. You will store it for 7 years or 10 years.
Okay, got
I
it.
hope that clarifies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
One more
is
doubt.
as an example. I do not have a standard retention. So it is just an example. What is the retention which is there? That is part of your gap assessment and data mapping inventory. How long the data is stored? And if you are storing beyond the requirement, how do you know you will store beyond the requirement? Unless and until you see that and document it, it is more than 7 years or 10 years. Let's say the data is stored for 15 years. And when you do a gap assessment, you identify that data. The control says that you have to store it for 7 years, but the data is stored for 15 years. So you go and take a call and say that as part of mitigation measures, 7 years of old data that I go and delete it, right? So that's the way of calling it off.
Okay, got it, Vasanth. And one more doubt. Every organization should have a mandatory TPO. Uh, like it is a separate position in the organization or
SDF has a requirement of having a DPO, and DPO is also a requirement across organization and across various functions. Let's say, for example, whether it's a CISO or whether it's a compliance or it's a legal, today plays a combination of roles. They will act as a DPO and legal also. They will act as a CISO and DPO also today. So this is not going to make any change. It's an additional role or an add-on kind of a role which will be given to the existing. But from us, if you are SDF, yes, it is mandate for you. Significant data fiduciary. And today, significant data fiduciary is yet to be announced, to my knowledge. And once that is announced, we might, okay, we might see or regulated entities like banks, health insurance providers, those people will become insurance providers, those people will become also significant data fiduciary. It's an expectation. Yeah. I cannot comment on that until a discuss come, but the expectation is people who have a large number of data in terms of directly providing services to the consumer, they will become a significant data fiduciary.
Okay, understood. Thanks,
Yeah.
Vasanth, for the
Yeah. Yeah.
clarifications.
Thank you.
Thank-
Vasanth, this is Anil. What are
Thank
the
you.
most common mistakes you have seen organizations make while preparing for this DPDPA compliance?
Most mistakes. See, I would honestly say this DPDP has come very recently. People are figuring it out how to implement it. So rather than calling it out as a mistake, I would see is this following certain processes. They go left, right, and center, identify, try to implement. Okay. So first thing is you have to go and identify the leaders to help and make them understand. If you do not make them understand, you will not able to get the support. The only way of making them understand is showcasing the non-compliance's impact and telling them if you don't do, this will happen. This is the kind of impact. So creating awareness is what I see most of the people does not do, and that is something you have to be a starting process in creating a board. That is what I can comment on. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Vasanth, this is Praneeth here. Um, so I have a question regarding notice and consent. Uh,
Yeah.
is there any kind of a thumb rule where a consent can be used and a notice can be used, or
See,
is it like very
hmm,
dynamic?
hmm. Okay, I'll give you an example. When you
Yep.
join, for example, um, when you go to a website, says that I will collect so certain information, and you will say that I agree to this, right? That is what you
Right.
are giving consent to use your data. Functional cookies, strictly necessary cookies, or saying that advertisement or marketing. You generally we don't take advertisement or marketing, but only strictly necessary cookies. From a consent perspective, notice is something. For example, I'll take give you HRM as an example. You come to the platform, you collect certain information which is really required as part of providing the services. Those can be given as a consent by coming to the platform and providing this information. This is information will be collected as part of the services which is being provided. These all information which is being collected as part of the services being provided. Okay. And if I want to collect additional information, like I told you, for example, uh, biometric access
Right.
or any other information which is apart from the requirement of employment, right? So those information can be taken as part of consent, should be taken as part of the consent, and any information as part of your legitimate interest on the legal basis can be given through notice.
Got it. So the usual requirements would probably come under consent, sorry, the notice, and additional requirements has to come under consent, something similar to that.
Um, mm, I cannot call it as an additional requirement. Basically, as part of your legal basis and legitimate interest that you are collecting certain
Got
data,
it.
which can be informed through notice. And if you are collecting any additional information, when I say if you are collecting any information where which is not as part of your legal or legitimate interest, where you have to take permission as part of the through the consent. I just want to just put in a very high level, all right, to show the clarify the differences.
Right. 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 Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm. Okay. Um, I'll move to the next piece of it quickly. I'll make it little interesting to the way possible I can do. Okay, so privacy governance, we talk about privacy governance while we talked about gap assessment, privacy impact assessment, and privacy audit. What is the difference between privacy impact assessment and privacy audits? What are these two different things? That is what we are going to talk about. When I do privacy impact assessment, why should I do privacy audits? Right? So this is where a lot of people asking questions. Why should I do a privacy audit again when I do privacy impact assessment already as part of the process? Okay. So PIA, privacy impact assessment, it is going to ask you, should we do this and how safely? Which is as part of your onboarding, which is a previous phase. But today the confusion comes as part of DPDP implementation. I'm doing a privacy impact assessment. Why should I do privacy audits? Because we already have systems in place. We have to assess the controls in place, whether these controls are adequate in place. That is why we are doing privacy impact assessment also as part of the implementation. Then, as part of your continual compliance, is what you are going to do privacy audit. So, defining control necessary requirements are in place, though that is going to happen at the PIA stage. Whether the necessary controls are being as per what it has been agreed, whether it has been effectively followed or not, that is what is going to look into privacy audit. Proactive approach, and from privacy audit, it's a retrospective approach. Did we do what we promised or required? Okay, the objectives differs. Privacy impact assessments proactively identify and mitigate risk. Privacy audit verify those compliances and those controls are effective over the period, which is your nature of preventive, and privacy audit is about detective. And the ownership lies between privacy impact assessment, which is a business function, the DPO and the privacy team. And if you have a separate team which is doing internal audit, GRC, and DPO, which is independent. The reason why I'm calling independent, there is a requirement of SDF to perform independent privacy audits. So just quickly skip on because we have already discussed. But anyway, the PAA identify the risk before the data processing. Does the program or activity involves PIA data? If it is yes, the personal information used as part of the decision making process, will it affects an individual? Okay, so it is, if it is yes, then you will do as part of that. If you handle, if this particular process involves PA privacy PIA information, then it qualifies for a privacy impact assessment. Okay, identify the risk before data processing begins and trigger during the system design or a process change or a new vendor. Why design, system design or process change is also PIA is important? Because you have designed a process, you have designed a system where the controls are being implemented. When there's a change in your design or change in your process, those process, how it is going to impact your controls implemented, that also needs to be looked upon. It is not only when you buy a new tool or you add on a new vendor or add on a new services or provide or a SaaS services vendor. It is equally important to look from a design and a process level change perspective. And key metric, which is your like your risk impact assessment, risk scoring method. And this identified risk will be as part of your risk register and mitigate it. And post mitigation, you will take a call to whether to go live with a particular vendor or a system design or a process which has been proposed for a change. So these all are proactive, and this will happen only post the risk has been identified, mitigated, and proactively which has been implemented. And privacy audit, which is an assurance model. You look into the controls agreed, you look into the controls implemented, whether those controls effectively implemented and operated, not only at a design level, also at an operational level throughout the period. Those will be looked upon, whether it is an annual cycle or half yearly, depending upon organization to organization can take a call. Depending upon the high risk system, it can be more frequent. When I say high risk system, where you have a critical PA data, where like your Aadhaar or health records or biometric records, those systems will have a considered as a critical system. More frequent audit cycle will help you to identify and mitigate issues even before and externally somebody finds it or some breaches happens. Triggers, PIA, new systems, you're processing biometrics, children data, significant changes in technology. And for audit triggers, which is your annual cycles or DPO mandate, regulatory readiness, and DPDP for a significant data fiduciary that I'm going to show you in this slide. For significant data fiduciary, this is an explicit requirement. For periodic privacy impact assessment, you have to mandatorily do periodic data audits by an independent auditors. Independent auditors refers to independent third-party auditors and appointment of a data protection officer. I believe Mr. Anil has asked a point of a representation or DPO requirement. So data protection officer requirement is specifically given for SDFs, significant data fiduciary. Significant data fiduciary can be anyone who are processing a large number of PAI data. We will foresee once the government notifies who are SDF. Okay, so going to the next slide, what we have covered in the privacy impact assessment. We are just trying to quickly show you how was this with the well-known movie Bahubali, a legendary framework for privacy compliances. Just to clarify to everyone who are part of the system, not everyone would be in the privacy. So just want to explain in a very interactive way how this with the example of this movie. So imagine a kingdom is your tech company and throne is a project you're building. We will see how this particular movie is handling privacy governance. Okay. So as I told you, privacy impact assessment is well before something happens or something is you're going to do. Something before you do, right? So when there is a war which is going to come, people plan a strategy how to handle, right? So these while handling, you define certain strategy. Those strategy, whether it is safe for our um, own kingdom, or whether it is safe for their soldiers, or whether it is what if happens something goes wrong, right? That is how. So, for example, in the great battle against Kalakaya, Bahubali and the team sits in the room. They discuss about what is if enemy breaks in the front line, identify the vulnerabilities, and what if how do we protect our people and planning for safety for new tactics. Let's say, for example, they use a tent method, right? Whether that tent will, what will happen to our own soldiers, kind of, right? So they identify the risk of implementing, planning for safety. What if the enemy breaks the front line? We identify vulnerabilities in our data flow. How do we protect our soldiers? We plan security measures for user personal data. Innovative tactics. You are building something new, but you're building something new strategy. But what if happens that strategy is going to create a risk to our own employees or users? For example, the fire tent strategy is safe. Accessing the new technology brings any additional risk rather than uh, mitigating it. So that is why a PA. An audit is something where you have done something, whether you have executed correctly. Do you have evidence of doing those? It is equally important to document all the controls that you have implemented, and those controls are being operated, and you will be able to show those evidences as part of the audit. So it is equally important to prove that you have designed, operated, and documented those as part of your audits. So privacy by design, and another example. So the Trishula formation I have taken as an example. So he built a strategy, and it is privacy is not afterthought, it's part of the architecture. You're bringing that privacy into the architecture at the initial level. So that is something privacy by design. Take this photos as an example. The gates are closed by default. You do not have to ask the guards to lock it. It is always only authorized. Somebody can come only if it is authorized. System should be built on providing kind of maximum privacy and security automatically without somebody coming and asking to always say some take any actions. So it is closed by default. Systems and security and privacy controls ought to be implemented by default. That is what we are trying to say. And only access is being granted at the time of the need. Take a privilege access management tools as an example. You might have an access, but there is somebody has to go and approve at the time of the entry or at the time of you logging in, right? So take this, that as an example. So that is how you can bring in trust to the your customers. By design, by default, is very important for the trust for the foundation. So PIA, what could go wrong? Planning the battle. Audit, did you follow the rules? And this is a quote and query. For example, how do you follow? That's a two quick example I want to give, though we have covered it. Before going to privacy audit, if you have any questions between privacy impact assessment and privacy audit, I'm happy to explain. Yeah, clarify.
Vasanth Pawan here. The thing
Yes,
is,
about.
one, I'm listening in terms of concerns and notices, right? So, first of all, what I feel is organizations still not yet serious about collecting the data and identifying what is privacy data or what is privacy or what is PI data in India mainly, because a lot of third party entities are entering into the organizations to handle the HR data, and there is simply the traditional way of taking the backups or maintaining that particular data with respect to the only what you call certain applications are maintained. So do you see the gap of auditing the third parties as well as concerns or notices to those third parties are not yet in shape? And because we have a number of cases where employees data got leaked. If you look at any major data breaches, data privacy breaches, so where it happened through only the third parties which they are engaging in handling the privacy data. Okay. And secondly, it is not only the management has to have awareness, but the employees, they themselves don't know that what kind of why they are giving the data, and they simply say that, okay, my HR is asking or my concern application is asking, I'm sharing it. But after that, what is happening to their data or what is happening to that one, no one knows. So do you see, is there a gap between assessing the third parties who's handling our data and still I mean just simply I mean like this is my, and I would like to understand that is there a gap or how frequently we can do the privacy audits there? Okay, number one. And secondly, why we need to have a privacy audit, because what is a big difference to the controls which already we are assessing as part of other regulatory audits or other any internal audits with respect to the controls. Let's say majorly, if you look at again, we'll be auditing what you call access management controls or backup controls. Apart from that, what is that which the privacy audits will be covering it? These are the 2 points which I would like to ask.
Okay. So privacy audit, I will park it for now your question because anyway I'm
Yeah,
going to cover as a separate slide. But you have multiple questions. One, consent and notice for third party. Okay. And data shared to third party, the breaches, audit clauses, and that is what something you're asked about. And third is about data collected. Fourth point, I'm parking it, privacy audit. I'll go one by one. Okay.
sure.
Concern notice for third party. So for third parties, concern notice is not required. It has to be in the contracting model. So if you're third party, if you're involving any third party of vendor, so you have to ensure that DPA covers the entire requirement of the you being a data fiduciary. It has to contract flow down model in your DPA. Whether it is a single country or multi-country, the relevant country regulation, the laws and the regulatory sector-specific regulation also comes into your DPA. This is a mandate for any vendors that you work with. So this has to be clearly called out in your contract and in your DPA. Which all countries that you work with, which all countries that applicable laws, which all sector-specific laws are applicable. This has to be clearly called out along with your technical security measures, whether it is your, for example, you will take SSC as an example, where you will have all the requirements is being covered out. So something like that, you have to have your requirements covered as part of your contract and DPA. Okay, that is one for the point. Second point, data to the third party. Okay, we're talking about a lot of data which has been given to third party. See, you while you share the data to the third party because you are involving multiple vendor for multiple services, it is always not one vendor. For example, if you're working with one vendor, um, those vendor will have multiple integrations that based upon the organization requirement. So you have to look into the flow. If you look in the privacy impact assessment or the data inventory, so what all systems which is being used, where to whom all the data which is also being shared. Why we have mapped it? Because to understand that where all the data goes and sit in, whether you have sufficient controls implemented to those vendors also. So it is equally important to see the security between vendor one to vendor two that you have made. So that security has been assessed, whether it has been API integration or whether it has been any other method of SFTP sharing. So you have to verify those controls are adequate or adequately implemented. That is two. And additionally, you asked about audit. Okay, you can able to audit certain companies, but you will not able to audit everyone. That's the current systems. You cannot go and audit the companies like Microsoft, company like AWS. You have to rely only on the SOC reports. So for SaaS companies, you have to look into the SOC reports, look into the controls. You have to send them TPRM, identify the requirement controls are in place. And
Yep.
third is the point on data collected. Okay. Data collected is what we call as data minimization control in the privacy. So you have to assess the controls, sorry, you have to assess the data which is being collected, whether it is really necessary, and only collect, let the vendor or through the data controller, which is data fiduciary, only collect those data. First of all, your systems or any organization department should understand this is data is really required, only I'm collecting. For something which is not really required, I will not collect. I'll give you one example for it. Um, take HR activities in organization as an example. Earlier, you used to have people do walkathon kind of activity performed by HR. What happens? People say, I have done activities, I have reached so and so movement steps. This is my goal. But then people realize that they have used some systems like fans. They've tied it with their pets, these devices, or say they let them roam. This all happened. I'm just saying these all kind of things which have happened in the industry. So what additionally they took, they started including more in taking more information. They look into your vitals that it has been as part of your through smartwatches or smart devices. They collect more data to verify the authenticity. So the purpose is not defined at day one. It is over the period when there is a necessity which comes. So you have to collect those data only when such necessity comes in place, not at day one. So your team or any organization should be very clear in what data being collected and whether it is really required for the purpose. And without there is no purpose, no data should not be collected. And if you look into the data mapping inventory, the purpose should be called out very clearly. If you do not have a purpose, you should not collect or store the data. That is what we call as data minimization.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So
Okay.
moving to the privacy audit. So privacy audit again is it's a separate presentation. I have made it, identifying, doing a scoping, evidence analysis, gap, and closure. Last mile definition, I have a last mile definition. I want to call it out. So, for example, um, um, a user or a, let's say HR is sending a resume to a manager on an email. The manager is using the handheld device, the phone, where he is looking to the resume in the phone. He downloaded the resume. Tomorrow there is a data subject request coming asking the data to be deleted. Okay. And the audit logs in the audit, it has been identified that it has been deleted from the system or the HRMS platform, which has been deleted. But it also identified that the particular department manager who has downloaded in their personal device. The logs will be able to show you that data has been downloaded on the personal device, whether that particular data has been deleted or not. So when you do a process, it has to be end to end till the last mile of the data has to be deleted at the last mile. These are all gray areas where we as in when DPDP is in place, these all areas we have to be uh, prepared and ensure that this has been handled upon. While it has been there with other countries, but this has to be very keenly looked upon. We should not look only at the systems. We should look into the till the last mile of the data where the data has been passed across. This is what I'm referring to the last mile. Okay. So take example employee health record. You are auditing an uh, system where employee health insurance data which has been present. For example, you should review the access control list of health data. You identify 3 former HR employees still holding the read access. This is more looking into an systems at the state and in the previous state, whether that particular user was supposed to have access, whether they had access during this period, which is they are not supposed to have, which accounts in failure in account deprovisioning. So I believe if you can able to correlate with PIA, privacy impact assessment, it is about looking into the system, looking into necessary control in place, looking into and documenting whether the controls are adequately required. But if you look a privacy audit, look into the controls which has been implemented, whether the controls are being operated effectively. The access deprovisioning control is not operated effectively. It has been identified 3 people in the system as not access has not been revoked. That's the difference of privacy audit. Correction, immediate revocation, corrective action to implement an automated deprovisioning trigger. Give you an example. Similarly, third-party lead imports for your sales data and for vendor data security. For example, take finance and accounting. This is what we see in most of the cases today. In any of the audits, you also go, finance and procurement team are the most vulnerable team in any organization. Where if there is a data which has been sent to bank, it has to be, there is a data which is shared, it has to be password protected or it has to be shared through secure manner or through integration method. But there are organizations who sends in, let's say, for example, as part of audit, you are doing an audit, you are seeing an organization is sending bank account number or other number as a verification purposes. It cannot be not a masked information also. And you also end up in identifying that data which has been shared in a CSV format without encrypted or password protected data also. So these all things, something which we like not looking only from the IT systems, also looking from a process perspective where all PA data can be shared between multiple other vendors. As I told, vendor 1 to vendor 2. You have to look into the controls are implemented between 2 vendors or between, let's say, for example, you have a vendor who is providing services. That vendor is providing, you have integrated those vendor to another vendor. These both vendors consistently share the data between each, either through files or Excels, I mean, or through integrations. Those also has to be validated and checked and audited. Okay. So this is an example of one case example for a database administrator where a credential which is being used, you will not able to identify something goes wrong. This is a common control which will be covered as part of security, but still, I just want to call it out. It is security and privacy is not different. This is something which is part of the existing systems only, but what additionally going to do as part of privacy requirements and privacy audits. So you have to combine these all audits together. Well, you do it today. A lot of organizations do a combined audit, which is ISO 27001 or ISO 27701. Look into that, or GDPR requirements. You have to combine all this audit. Additionally, add the privacy requirement and map those control into your audit criteria. You're not going to do anything new. You're going to include your additional standard, additional requirement into your criteria and say that I'm also looking from a DPDP lens also, and include those into your existing processes. If it is the same team, if it's a different team, then you have to undergo multiple audits. Ideally, it can be done together. I hope I've explained. Open for questions.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I've shared the CPE form in the chat. So people who are members of Hyderabad chapter, they can fill and submit the CPE form, and will automatically upload your CPEs into ISACA portals. For other members, who are members of other chapters or other forums, you can manually upload the CPEs into your respective portals. The forum is open for questions. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Yes, Suresh, please.
I'm first time joining in this Teams meeting. So where can I get this CP form for submission to you?
Sir, your voice is not clear. Can you repeat that?
I am ISACA Hyderabad chapter member only, and I am first time joining in this Teams meeting.
Okay. In the chat, it is in the chat. I just pasted in the chat for this Teams meeting. You can just pick it up from there.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Vasanth? Just let me check the chat. Vasanth, I think there are no more questions. Thank you so much for your time. Am I audible, Vasanth?
Hello. Hi, Vasanth. I have a quick question. This is Sai. I just want to understand, as you also have the background of HR tech, right? As a standard practice, most of the HR team members are asking for the personal documentation during the part of the offer letter rolling out, right? So they collect a lot of documentation, including the PAN card, Aadhaar card, whatnot, the pay slips of the current company, all these details. But most of the times candidates are not in a place to reject or say no to them their requirement, right? Their request. Though it is not a formal process, it is happening. How do we address these kind of issues, Vasanth?
Okay. See, it is about organization to decide what documents to collect as part of their background verification process. If you talk about background verification process, there are multiple level of background verification process happens. There are 5-point checks, 7-point check, multiple level of checks that will happen across background verification. Depending upon the sensitivity of the project that you're working, there are also project specific background verification will also happen as okay as part of your onboarding or during the process of any project which you have been placed in also, right? So this is not only one time process, this may be a continual process, and depending on the data that will vary upon time to time. Okay. So when you say you're not comfortable sharing it, there is something called legal basis and legitimate interest, as I was talking about. So what is something which is really needed is your PAN to verify you are the real person, whether you have in previous or you are doing a parallel working or currently working. So all this information will be verified as part of your PAN. Just giving you some high level example. To your Aadhaar to verify the identity of the uh, employee who is joining or onboarding. Okay, bank account number for your salary and other things to verify. So what is something which is you're not really you're concerned? For example, you do not want to give your biometric where you have a concern, where you want to reject it, for example. So that is where there are cases where Aadhaar level authentication happens today, where facial authentication happens. You do not need to give any documents. It is been linked with some digital inventory kind of thing where you can able to provide in where the companies does integration where these documents will be integrated through this platform which is readily available. So that is also doable depending upon because as I said, it depends upon organization to organization and the type of methods they use to collect the data and the systems that they use. It will maturize over the period is what I feel after DPT. Did I answer
Understood.
you or?
Yes, yes, understood. Understood.
Okay.
And one more question, follow-up
Yeah.
question. Do the employees have the right to check the current status of their documentation, where the documents are, and can they ask after a certain time, can they ask the
Yes.
employer to delete the
Yes.
data if they are not comfortable, certain data at least?
See, first point to answer you, yes, you can ask the status of the data and whether you can definitely look into the data. That is, as a data subject right, you have a rights to ask, and to delete the data as long as it is not necessary. See, you might think that I'm no longer associated with this organization. I do not want to keep the data within this particular organization or the organization system which is used for HR purposes, for example. But from an organization perspective, they have to follow certain regulations, right? For example, tomorrow they want to getting into an audit, they have to provide the data for 3 years or 4 years because based upon stat audit, for example. They have to undergo some audits where the data has been properly there is no mismatches in the data, either it's a financial data payout or your travel and expenses data. And in fact, if you look into from an MCA perspective, Ministry of Corporate Affairs has a requirement to look into your systems data for, and you have to retain the data for 8 years. So the audit trail has to be retained for 8 years. Anything that you perform on the systems should be auditable. And certain information like your bank account numbers or to prevent fraudulent activities, there are certain regulations in place to retain it for so and so period. And apart from that requirements, any other data which is being stored additionally, those data can be automatically deleted or deleted. Ideally, it should be automatically deleted. Okay. I can give you the current example what uh, I know and we follow. There are take now take my company as an example. We have a product which basically automatically purge based upon your configuration, depending upon country specific. And if you do not, you can configure this particular data, this category of data, this data set you want to delete after 3 years. And this particular data set for this particular country, you have to delete it after 5 years. So you can configure and automatically delete it based upon the category of the data. That is a designed method of doing it, rather than somebody coming and asking to delete it. Yes, you can come and ask to delete it, and people can say no if it is really required for them to keep the data, and they can go out and delete it if it is really not required. They should go out and delete it if it is really not required. Yeah, that's the answer for you. But there are systems in place
Understood.
to automatically purge the data post the need.
Understood. Thank you, Vasanth.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Uh, once Vasanth, once the DPDP Act comes into effect, do you anticipate an increase in data protection related legal cases being brought before the judiciary? Like what happens in the North America, or we can see there are like more uh, data privacy acts are there, right?
It will come, Anil, but okay, with the recorded session, I will not be able to transparently talk. Yes,
No,
it will come.
the
DPDP
way
Act is
you
already effective. First of all, DPDP Act is already effective. The rules has already come, and people are moving towards asking for their vendors to are you compliant and all. So that is something based on the draft rules itself. People started doing assessment, and people thought there will be some exceptions for companies and all that. So since that the expectation did not go through. So now it is applicable for all the companies, and you have to follow it very strictly.
But somewhere I just read it. It is going to be effect from 2027 onwards. So far, the rules are
That's a
not yet
timeline
formed.
period. That's a timeline period. Act is effective, okay, but the over the period you have to comply. You have to comply within the so and so period. So tomorrow, after the period of, let's say there's a date which has been, I think it is 18 months. If it is November, I think 13th it got released. It would be somewhere around May, somewhere around 13th May or something. That is the cutoff date. 13th May of 2027. That's a cutoff date.
Okay.
So that is something 13th or 12th May, roughly. I'm just telling you. So after that, people can, and there is also phases which is given. What time you should comply, what and all. There are some steps are there. So, anyways, you can take post 13th May. You can start seeing whenever there is a breach which is happening. That is, people start coming in.
Thanks, Vasanth.
Sure. Imagine, you call up an HR for background check and they say, as per DPDP, we have deleted the data and we cannot confirm your background. So, I think all said and done, I'm sure there are reasons why there are certain, exceptions given to the acts like this.
So, see, as part of legitimate interest, I told you,
Yeah,
you have to, because you have to store. This is not only. I have a query from one of my customer, right? So who was asking, though so we are commonly connected. So while we speaking, he was asking, Vasanth, if there is a ex-employee coming and say that I want to provide, you are provided my verification without my consent, my work experience in this company without my consent, what will I do? That company, that employee has moved out of my company 5 years or 3 years before. But this guy is coming and may come and say, you have provided this information without my consent, what will I do? These all, but again, as part of legitimate interest, yes, you can share it. Okay, there is no hard rule in it. We will see similar questions which is coming across the industry because we are not matured enough today, but these all things will come over the period which has been expected.
So in this case, would it need a notice or a consent?
As part of notice is more than enough.
Notice is that. Okay.
Notice on your privacy notice, published in your website, it is more than enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is important. So, but what data you store of that employee is also equally important. Like very minimal data you should store for verification. Let's say there is let's say 10 years, after 10 years, somebody is coming and asking whether this employee has worked with you. You have to keep very minimal information to respond back to that user. to that particular verification provider.
Sure. Maybe not the blood group, but yeah, how much, what was the tenure in his
What tenure of the
organization?
period? Yeah.
If there is
That
any
employee
disciplinary
of
action
the
taken.
employed. Yeah. Employee ID. Okay.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. The name.
Perfect. Any other questions, guys? Okay. Vasanth, I think that was a great session. Interesting. I've learned a lot of things. I'm sure all of us have got a lot more clarity in right from basic things, what is difference between consent and a notification. Even personally, I still had a lot of confusion in a lot of terms that you clarified today. Very informative session. Thank you for your time. And this is, I think this is just an initiation of, the collaboration between the two chapters. And I hope this grows throughout the year continuously. And we'll have many more sessions between the forums, DPO Club in Hyderabad, and personally with Vasanth and ISACA Hyderabad. Thank you for your time. For the chapter members, we are conducting a curtain raiser on 25th January at CR Foundation Kundapur. That is already out in our LinkedIn post. So we this curtain raiser, I think I see a question where, how do you become a part of ISACA Hyderabad chapter and all that. So we will be explaining what are the different certifications that ISACA offers, what are the different training courses that ISACA would offer to its members, non-members. Right. So this session is scheduled for 25th of this month. It is open for everybody. It is a free open session that will be conducted from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Just a 2-hour session where you can come down and ask all these questions to the board, and we will be happy to answer them. Okay. Any other questions, you can just DM me. Okay. Or you can follow us on our LinkedIn chapter page, ISACA Hyderabad chapter page, and the Engage web page. We'll be more than happy to help. Right. And we also have another announcement that we would be conducting the She Leads Tech conference on 7th of March. So more updates coming on that at a later stage. But yeah, this is it from us for today. Thank you, guys. Thank you for connecting and sharing your knowledge. Have a great year. Thank you all. Please fill your CP forms before you exit. Thank you. Have a good day.
Can you resend that link?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sending it right away. Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Others can leave the session. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.